My name is Scarlett, and I am 44 years old. Some people say that by this age, you know exactly who you are, that life has already shaped you into your final form. I used to believe that too. I thought I had figured everything out, that my path was clear and unchangeable. But life has a way of surprising you, even when you think there are no surprises left. This story began on an ordinary Tuesday morning in March, the kind of day that feels unremarkable, where you go through the motions without expecting anything to shift. I had a gynecologist appointment scheduled, something I had been putting off for far too long. Work had consumed me, deadlines piling up like autumn leaves. My job in marketing demanded everything, and I gave it willingly, grateful for the distraction it provided from the quietness of my home. I had been divorced for 2 years by then. 15 years of marriage had ended not with drama or betrayal, but with a slow, painful realization that we had become strangers sharing the same space. We were polite strangers, careful strangers, but strangers nonetheless. The divorce was amicable, as people say, though I am not sure any divorce truly is. We simply signed papers, divided our lives into neat boxes, and walked away. Since then, I had thrown myself into routines: work, grocery shopping, occasional dinners with friends who were still married and looked at me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. I told myself I was fine, that I was rebuilding. But truthfully, I was just existing, moving from one day to the next without really feeling anything at all. The clinic was the same one I had visited for years, a modest building with cream-colored walls and photographs of flowers in cheap frames. My previous gynecologist, Dr. Patterson, had retired 6 months earlier. I had received a letter informing me that a new doctor would be taking over his patients. Her name was Dr. Victoria Chen. I sat in the waiting room that morning, flipping through a magazine without reading it. Around me, other women waited, some visibly pregnant, others, like me, here for routine checkups. The receptionist called my name, and I followed a nurse down the familiar hallway to the examination room. "Dr. Chen will be with you shortly," the nurse said with a professional smile before closing the door. I changed into the paper gown, feeling the usual vulnerability that comes with medical appointments. The room was cold, sterile, smelling faintly of disinfectant. I sat on the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath me, and waited. When the door opened, I looked up and saw her for the first time. Dr. Victoria Chen was younger than I expected, perhaps in her mid-30s. She had short hair, styled in a practical cut that framed her face beautifully. She wore thin-framed glasses that gave her an intellectual air, and her white coat was crisp and professional. But what struck me immediately was her smile. It was warm, genuine, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes and makes you feel like you matter. "Good morning, Scarlett," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Chen, but please, call me Victoria." Her handshake was firm but not aggressive, confident but not cold. I found myself relaxing slightly, which was unusual for me in these situations. "It's nice to meet you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Victoria pulled up a stool and sat down, placing my file on her lap. "I've been reviewing your medical history. Dr. Patterson kept excellent notes. Before we begin the examination, I'd like to talk a bit. How have you been feeling generally? Any concerns or changes I should know about?" I appreciated that she asked. So many doctors rushed through appointments, treating patients like items on a checklist. But Victoria seemed genuinely interested. Her dark eyes focused on me with an attentiveness that made me feel seen. "I've been okay," I said carefully. "Maybe more tired than usual, but I think that's just work stress." "What do you do for work?" "Marketing. I manage campaigns for a mid-sized firm. The hours can be demanding." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "Stress can definitely affect your physical health. Are you making time for yourself? Exercise, hobbies, things that help you recharge?" I hesitated. When was the last time I had done something just for myself? "Not as much as I should," I admitted. It's important, she said gently, not in a lecturing way, but as if she understood. Especially in your 40s, our bodies change, and we need to be kinder to them. She smiled again. I know that's easier said than done. I'm terrible at taking my own advice. Something about her honesty disarmed me. I found myself smiling back. It's always easier to give advice than follow it. Exactly, she laughed, a soft, musical sound that filled the cold room with unexpected warmth. The examination itself was thorough, but conducted with such professionalism and care that I felt comfortable throughout. Victoria explained everything she was doing, asked if I was okay, and made what is usually an uncomfortable experience as bearable as possible. Afterward, as I dressed behind the curtain, she sat at her desk making notes. When I emerged, she looked up and gestured to the chair across from her. Everything looks good, she said. No concerns from the examination. However, given your age and your stress levels, I'd recommend coming in for checkups a bit more regularly. Every 6 months instead of annually. Just to stay ahead of anything. That makes sense, I agreed. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying me with that same thoughtful expression. Can I ask you something personal? You mentioned stress. Is everything okay otherwise? Sometimes physical symptoms are connected to emotional well-being. The question surprised me. It was beyond her medical scope, venturing into territory most doctors avoided. But something in her tone made me want to answer honestly. I went through a divorce 2 years ago, I said quietly. It's been an adjustment. I thought I'd have bounced back by now, but some days are harder than others. Victoria nodded slowly. Divorce is like grief. People expect you to move on according to some invisible timeline, but healing doesn't work that way. Be patient with yourself. Did you? I started to ask, then stopped, feeling I was overstepping. Go through a divorce? She finished for me. Yes, 3 years ago. I understand more than you might think. In that moment, something shifted. She was no longer just my doctor. She was a person, someone who had experienced pain and come through it. I felt a connection forming, fragile and unexpected, like the first thread of a spider's web. Thank you, I said softly, for understanding. Of course, Victoria replied. If you ever need to talk, even outside of medical stuff, I'm here. Sometimes it helps just to know someone gets it. I left the clinic that day feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't just that the appointment had gone well, it was Victoria herself, the way she had made me feel heard and valued. As I drove home through the city streets, I caught myself smiling for no particular reason. That should have been it. A pleasant doctor's visit, nothing more. But life, as I said, has a way of surprising you. 3 weeks later, I developed a minor issue that required a follow-up appointment. Nothing serious, just something that needed attention. When I called the clinic, the receptionist asked if I wanted to see Dr. Chen again, or if I'd prefer another doctor. Dr. Chen, please, I said without hesitation. The appointment was scheduled for the following Thursday. I found myself looking forward to it more than I should have for a medical visit. I told myself it was because Victoria was competent and kind, that it was simply nice to have a doctor I could trust. But underneath that logic, something else stirred. Something I wasn't ready to name. When I arrived at the clinic, Victoria greeted me with that same warm smile, and I felt my heart skip in a way that alarmed me. Scarlett, good to see you again, she said as we walked to her office. How have you been? Busy as always, I replied. Work has been relentless. The follow-up was brief, the issue minor and easily addressed. But afterward, instead of ending the appointment, Victoria leaned against her desk and asked, Have you found any ways to de-stress since we last talked? Not really, I admitted. I keep meaning to, but time gets away from me. I completely understand, she said. I'm the same way. I keep telling myself I'll join a yoga class or start painting again, but then work happens. She paused, then added, Though I did start reading more, it's been helpful. Do you read? I used to love reading, I said, surprised by the question. I haven't made much time for it lately. What did you used to read? Psychology books, mostly. Understanding human behavior has always fascinated me. Maybe that's why I ended up in marketing, trying to figure out what makes people tick. Victoria's face lit up. I love psychology books. Have you read anything by Irvin Yalom? I've heard of him but never got around to his work. You should. His writing is beautiful, philosophical. He blends therapy cases with existential questions. I think you'd love it. We talked for another 20 minutes about books, about the ones that had shaped us and the ones we wanted to read. Victoria recommended several titles, and I found myself writing them down on my phone, genuinely excited to explore them. As I left the clinic that day, I realized I was holding back. There was a warmth growing inside me whenever I thought about Victoria, something that went beyond simple appreciation for a good doctor. It made me uncomfortable because it didn't fit with who I thought I was. I had always been straight. Always. I had dated boys in high school, married a man, built a life that followed the script I was given. The idea of being attracted to a woman had never crossed my mind. Not seriously. Sure, I could appreciate when a woman was beautiful, but that was aesthetic recognition. Nothing more, wasn't it? But Victoria stayed in my thoughts. Her smile, her voice, the way she listened so intently. I pushed the feelings away, building walls with my principles, my past, my fear. This isn't me, I told myself firmly. I'm not like that. Yet the feelings persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. The weeks following that second appointment blurred together in a confusing haze of emotions I couldn't control. I tried to focus on work, burying myself in campaigns and client meetings. But Victoria's face kept appearing in my mind at the strangest moments. During presentations, while driving home, in the quiet hours before sleep when the world went still and my defenses dropped, I told myself it was admiration. She was intelligent, compassionate, easy to talk to. Of course I enjoyed her company. That was normal, wasn't it? Women had female friends they admired all the time. This was no different. Except it felt different. My heart raced when my phone buzzed, hoping irrationally that it might be a message from the clinic. I found excuses to drive past the building where she worked, never stopping, just passing by. I caught myself wondering what she did on weekends, whether she was seeing anyone, what she looked like when she wasn't wearing her white coat and professional demeanor. These thoughts terrified me. I was 44 years old, divorced, set in my ways. I had a framework for my life, boundaries I understood. I knew who I was supposed to be, and this, whatever this was, didn't fit into that carefully constructed identity. My principles stood like a wall between me and these forbidden feelings. I had been raised in a traditional family where certain things were simply not discussed, not acknowledged, not allowed. My parents had clear expectations about marriage, about normalcy, about the right way to live. Even though they were gone now, their voices still echoed in my head, shaping my beliefs about what was acceptable. I had internalized those lessons so deeply that questioning them felt like betraying everything I had been taught, everything I thought I believed. So I fought against the feelings. I pushed them down, locked them away, told myself they would pass if I just ignored them long enough. Surely this was temporary, a strange side effect of loneliness and stress. Once I got my life more balanced, once I started dating men again, this confusion would disappear. But the universe had other plans. A month after my follow-up appointment, I manufactured a reason to schedule another checkup. I told the receptionist I was concerned about something, a vague symptom that could justify a visit. It was dishonest, and I knew it, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to see Victoria again, even if I couldn't admit why. When I arrived at the clinic, my palms were sweating. I felt like a teenager with a crush, nervous and giddy and ashamed all at once. This is ridiculous, I told myself as I sat in the waiting room. You're a grown woman. Get it together. Victoria appeared in the doorway, scanning the room until her eyes found mine. Her face broke into a smile that made my stomach flip. "Scarlett," she said warmly, "come on back." As we walked down the hallway, she asked about my week, and I found myself relaxing into the conversation. With Victoria, talking felt effortless. She had a way of listening that made you want to share everything, as if your words actually mattered. The examination was quick. My manufactured concern easily dismissed as nothing serious. I felt guilty for wasting her time, but Victoria didn't seem to mind. "Everything's fine," she assured me as I dressed. "But I'm glad you came in. Better to check than to worry." When I emerged from behind the curtain, she was perched on the edge of her desk rather than sitting in her chair, a more casual posture than usual. "Can I ask you something?" she said, a slight hesitation in her voice. "And please feel free to say no if this is inappropriate." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Of course. There's a cafe just down the street from here. I'm done with appointments in about 20 minutes. Would you want to grab coffee? Just to talk? No medical stuff." I... I've really enjoyed our conversations, and I thought maybe we could continue one outside of this office. The world seemed to tilt slightly. This was crossing a line, moving from doctor-patient into something else, something undefined. Every rational part of my brain screamed that I should decline politely, maintain appropriate boundaries, protect myself from whatever this was becoming. But my mouth said, "I'd like that." Victoria's smile widened, relief evident in her eyes. "Great. I'll meet you there in half an hour?" I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. The cafe was a cozy place, with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture that somehow worked together. I arrived first, choosing a corner table where we could talk without being overheard. My hands trembled slightly as I waited, and I clasped them together in my lap to steady them. When Victoria walked in, she had changed out of her white coat into jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her look younger, more approachable. She spotted me immediately and waved, ordering something at the counter before joining me. "I hope you don't mind," she said as she sat down. "I ordered us both lattes. If you don't like coffee, I can get you something else." "Coffee is perfect," I assured her. For a moment, we just looked at each other, and I felt that strange electricity again, that awareness of her presence that went beyond normal social interaction. Victoria seemed to feel it too, because she glanced away first, a slight color rising in her cheeks. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she said. "I hope it's not weird. I feel like we connect, and I don't have many people in my life I can really talk to." "I feel the same way," I admitted, surprising myself with my honesty. We talked for over an hour that first time. About books, about our divorces, about the strange loneliness of rebuilding your life after it falls apart. Victoria told me about her marriage to a man who loved his career more than he loved her, who saw her as an accessory to his success rather than a partner. I told her about my ex-husband, about the slow death of our connection, about waking up one day and realizing we had nothing left to say to each other. "Do you think you'll marry again?" Victoria asked, stirring her second latte absently. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "Part of me wants that companionship again, but another part is terrified of making the same mistakes. What about you?" She was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "I've learned not to make assumptions about what my life will look like," she finally said. "I used to have such a clear plan, and it all fell apart. Now I'm trying to stay open to possibilities I hadn't considered before." There was something in the way she said it, a weight to the words that suggested layers of meaning I couldn't quite grasp. Or maybe I was reading too much into everything, seeing significance where there was only friendly conversation. That coffee meeting became the first of many. Over the next 2 months, Victoria and I fell into a pattern. I would schedule appointments more frequently than medically necessary, and afterward, we would meet at the cafe. Sometimes we walked through the nearby park instead, following winding paths beneath old trees, while we talked about everything and nothing. During one of those walks, As spring was beginning to soften into early summer, Victoria told me about her passion for helping people, about why she had chosen medicine despite the long hours and emotional toll. "I know it sounds cheesy," she said, kicking a small stone along the path. "But I genuinely want to make a difference. Even if it's just making one person feel less alone during a difficult time, that matters to me." "It's not cheesy," I said softly. "It's beautiful. The world needs more people like you." She glanced at me, and there was something in her eyes that made my breath catch. "The world needs more people like you too, Scarlett. You're stronger than you think you are." "I don't feel strong," I confessed. "Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "That's what strength is," Victoria said. "Not the absence of struggle, but continuing to show up despite it." Our conversations grew deeper, more personal. We texted between our meetings, sharing random thoughts throughout the day. Good morning messages, articles we thought the other would find interesting, photos of things that made us laugh. Victoria sent me voice notes during her lunch breaks. Her voice a comfort I looked forward to hearing. I found myself thinking about her constantly. When something funny happened at work, my first instinct was to tell Victoria. When I read something profound, I wanted to discuss it with her. She had become woven into the fabric of my daily life in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. Because alongside the joy of our growing friendship, I felt something else building inside me. Something I kept trying to deny but could no longer ignore. I was developing feelings for her. Real, deep, romantic feelings. The realization hit me one evening as I was getting ready for bed. I had been smiling at my phone, rereading a conversation we'd had earlier, when suddenly the truth crashed over me like a wave. This wasn't just friendship. This was attraction, desire, possibly even love. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, and felt panic rising in my chest. No, this couldn't be happening. I wasn't gay. I had never been attracted to women before. This was just confusion. Loneliness making me attached to someone who showed me kindness. It had to be. But even as I tried to rationalize it away, I knew I was lying to myself. What I felt for Victoria was unlike anything I had felt in years, maybe ever. It was more intense than what I had felt for my ex-husband, even in the early days of our relationship. With Victoria, everything was heightened. Every conversation felt important. Every glance held meaning. I noticed things about her I shouldn't notice. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the graceful movement of her hands when she talked, the faint scent of her perfume, something clean and subtle that lingered in my memory, the softness of her voice when she said my name. And I noticed the way she looked at me, too. Sometimes I would catch her staring, and when our eyes met, she wouldn't look away immediately. There was a question in her gaze, an invitation perhaps, or maybe just curiosity. I saw how her hand would brush against mine when we walked, contact that lasted a fraction too long to be entirely accidental. Was I imagining it? Was I projecting my own feelings onto innocent gestures? Or was Victoria feeling this too? The uncertainty was torture. But even worse was the war raging inside me between what I felt and what I believed I should feel. My principles, those deeply ingrained beliefs about who I was supposed to be, stood in stark opposition to these emerging feelings. I thought about my family, about what they would say if they knew. I thought about my friends, most of whom were married to men, living conventional lives. Would they understand? Would they judge me? I thought about society's expectations, about the comments I had heard throughout my life about those people, said with varying degrees of disapproval or discomfort. I had never been one of those people. I had always fit in, followed the rules, stayed safely within the lines. But my heart didn't care about any of that. My heart wanted Victoria. The internal battle exhausted me. Some days I would convince myself to create distance, to stop scheduling unnecessary appointments, to let the friendship fade naturally. But then Victoria would send me a text, or I would remember something she said, and my resolve would crumble. 3 months into our friendship, The tension between us had become almost unbearable. Every conversation felt charged with unspoken words. Every casual touch sent electricity through my body. We were circling something neither of us dared to name, getting closer with each meeting but never quite arriving. I started to feel jealous, which scared me more than anything else. When Victoria mentioned other people in her life, I found myself wondering about their significance. Was she dating anyone? Did she have someone special? The thought of her with someone else made my stomach twist with an emotion I recognized as possessiveness, which had no place in a friendship. "What's wrong with me?" I whispered to my reflection one night. "I'm 44 years old. I can't just change everything about who I am now." But was I changing? Or was I finally being honest about something that had always been there, buried beneath years of conditioning and fear? I didn't have answers. I only had feelings that grew stronger every day. Feelings I could no longer pretend didn't exist. The evening it all changed started ordinarily enough. Victoria and I met for one of our walks through the park. It was late June. The air warm but not oppressive. The kind of perfect summer evening that makes you grateful to be alive. We had been discussing a book I had finally read on her recommendation, one of Irvin Yalom's works about existential therapy. I was animated, excited to share my thoughts, and Victoria listened with that focused attention she always gave me. "The part about existential isolation really struck me," I said as we followed a path away from the main walkways, toward a quieter section of the park. "This idea that we're all fundamentally alone, that no one can truly know another person's inner experience. It's terrifying but also strangely comforting." "How is it comforting?" Victoria asked, genuinely curious. "Because if we're all alone in that way, then we're all in it together. The loneliness becomes universal, which somehow makes it less lonely." I laughed at the paradox. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Victoria said softly. "Though I think some people come closer than others to bridging that isolation. When you find someone who really sees you, who you can be completely honest with, that's rare and precious." She looked at me as she said it, and the weight of her gaze made my pulse quicken. We had reached a secluded bench beneath an old oak tree, away from the jogging paths and playgrounds. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Should we sit for a minute?" Victoria suggested. We settled on the bench, sitting closer than strictly necessary. The evening sounds surrounded us, birds settling into their nests, distant laughter from families heading home, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. "Scarlett," Victoria said after a moment of comfortable silence, "can I tell you something?" My heart began to race. "Of course." She turned to face me more fully, her expression serious but soft. "I've really valued these past few months. Getting to know you it's been one of the best things that's happened to me in a long time." "I feel the same way," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to be honest with you about something," she continued, and I could hear the nervousness in her voice. "And I'm terrified to say it, because I don't want to ruin what we have, but I also can't keep pretending." Time seemed to slow down. I was acutely aware of everything, the warmth of her leg almost touching mine, the fading light catching in her glasses, the rapid beating of my own heart. "What is it?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Victoria took a deep breath. "From the very first time we met, I felt something. I told myself it was just professional admiration, that I was simply interested in you as a person. But the more time we've spent together, the clearer it's become. Scarlett, I have feelings for you. Romantic feelings. And I hope you might feel something too." The world seemed to stop spinning. Everything I had been fighting against, all the feelings I had tried to suppress, came rushing to the surface. Victoria had just said what I had been too afraid to even think clearly. I started, but the words stuck in my throat. "It's okay," Victoria said quickly, misreading my hesitation as rejection. "I understand if you don't feel the same way. I just needed to be honest. We can forget I said anything and just go back to being. No, I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Don't take it back. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. What? I do feel something, I admitted, the words tumbling out now that I had started. I've been feeling it for weeks, maybe months. I've been terrified and confused because this isn't. I've never. I struggled to articulate the chaos inside me. I don't understand what's happening to me. You don't have to understand it, Victoria said gently, reaching out to take my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding. You just have to be honest about what you feel. I'm scared, I whispered, tears pricking at my eyes. My whole life, I've known who I was supposed to be. I had a plan, rules I followed. And this, what I feel for you, it goes against everything I thought I believed about myself. I know, Victoria said, squeezing my hand. Trust me, I understand. But Scarlett, you can't live your life according to someone else's script. You have to figure out what makes you happy. What feels true for you? What if I don't know what's true anymore? Then we figure it out together. There's no rush. We can take this as slowly as you need. I looked at her, then, really looked at her. This woman who had somehow slipped past all my defenses, who made me feel seen and valued in a way I had forgotten was possible. In her eyes, I saw patience, understanding, and something that looked very much like love. And in that moment, sitting on a park bench as the sun set around us, I made a choice. I chose honesty over fear. I chose possibility over principle. I chose to stop fighting what my heart had been trying to tell me for months. I leaned forward, closing the small distance between us, and kissed her. It was tentative at first, a question more than a statement. Our lips barely touched, soft and uncertain. But then Victoria responded, her free hand coming up to cup my cheek, and the kiss deepened. Her lips were warm and gentle, tasting faintly of the mint tea she had been drinking earlier. The touch was tender, unhurried, as if we had all the time in the world. There was no urgency, no desperation, just a sweet exploration of something new and precious. I felt something break open inside me, like a dam finally giving way. All the tension I had been carrying, all the resistance and fear, melted away. In its place was a warmth that started in my chest and spread through my entire body, a feeling of rightness I had never experienced before. When we finally parted, I was trembling. Victoria kept her hand on my cheek, her thumb gently stroking my skin, and I opened my eyes to find her watching me with such tenderness that I nearly started crying. Are you okay? She asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When I found my voice, it came out shaky but certain. I've never felt anything like that. Neither have I, Victoria admitted. I'm sorry if I moved too fast. I should have asked first. No, I said quickly. Don't apologize. I kissed you, and I'm glad I did, even though I'm also terrified about what this means. Victoria smiled, that beautiful, warm smile that had first drawn me to her. It doesn't have to mean anything more than what we want it to mean. We can take this one day at a time. We sat there for a long time, holding hands, not needing to fill the silence with words. The park grew darker around us, lights flickering on along the pathways. I knew that eventually we would have to leave this bubble, face the real world and all its complications. But for now, in this moment, I let myself simply feel. Feel the rightness of Victoria's hand in mine. Feel the warmth of the kiss still lingering on my lips. Feel the possibility of something beautiful unfolding, even if I didn't have all the answers yet. What happens now? I finally asked. Victoria considered the question carefully. Well, first I need to refer you to another doctor. I can't keep treating you as a patient now that this has changed. It wouldn't be ethical. That makes sense? I said, appreciating her professionalism even in this moment. Beyond that, we take it slow. We see where this goes. There's no pressure, Scarlett. I care about you too much to rush you into anything you're not ready for. I want to try, I said, the words coming from somewhere deep and true inside me. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm still scared, but I want to try. With you. Victoria leaned in and kissed me again. Softer this time, a seal on the promise we were making to each other. When we separated, she rested her forehead against mine. "We'll figure it out together," she whispered. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotion unlike anything I had ever experienced. I thought about Victoria constantly, my heart aching with a joy I had forgotten was possible. The world seemed brighter, more vivid, as if I had been living in black and white, and suddenly everything had burst into color. We started dating, though we kept it private at first. I wasn't ready to be public, wasn't ready to face the questions and judgments that would inevitably come. Victoria understood and never pushed me. She was patient in a way that made me love her even more. Love. That word had started to form in my mind, though I hadn't said it out loud yet. Was that what this was? This feeling that consumed me, that made every moment without her feel incomplete? I thought it might be. And that realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. True to her word, Victoria referred me to another gynecologist, a kind, older woman who asked no questions about the change. We no longer had to manufacture reasons to see each other through medical appointments. Instead, we simply made plans like any couple would, though the word couple still felt strange on my tongue. We spent evenings at her apartment, a cozy space filled with books and plants, watching movies and talking about everything and nothing. Victoria was an excellent cook, and she would prepare meals while I sat at her kitchen counter, watching her move with practiced grace, feeling a contentment I had never known existed. "What are you thinking about?" she would ask, catching me staring. "Just this. You. How lucky I am." She would smile, that smile that made my heart skip, and lean over to kiss me quickly before returning to her cooking. These small moments of domesticity felt revolutionary to me, proof that this thing between us was real and sustainable, not just a passing phase or temporary confusion. The physical intimacy between us developed slowly, respectfully. We kissed often, tender moments that left me breathless and wanting more. But Victoria never pushed beyond what I was comfortable with, always checking in, making sure I felt safe and ready for each new step. "There's no timeline," she told me one evening as we lay on her couch, tangled together in comfortable closeness. "We move at whatever pace feels right for you." "Aren't you frustrated?" I asked, feeling guilty about my hesitation. "No," she said firmly, tilting my chin up so I would look at her. "I'm not frustrated. I'm patient. Because you're worth waiting for, Scarlett. You're worth everything." Tears filled my eyes at her words. No one had ever made me feel so valued, so cherished. My ex-husband had loved me in his way, but it had been a comfortable love, a partnership of convenience. This was different. This was consuming and tender and passionate all at once. Still, the internal conflict didn't vanish instantly. Some mornings I would wake up with doubt tugging at me. That old voice from my past, whispering that this was wrong, that I was betraying everything I had been raised to believe. The principles I had built my life around didn't dissolve overnight. But then I would feel Victoria next to me, her arm casually thrown over my waist on the mornings I stayed over, her breathing calm and even, and the fear would melt away. Because how could something that brought such peace be wrong? How could something that made me feel so fully alive be sinful? I started to understand that my principles hadn't been my own. They had been inherited, passed down through generations without question. I had never stopped to ask whether they actually reflected my truth or simply the expectations placed upon me by family, society, and tradition. Victoria helped me see this, not through lectures or arguments, but simply by being herself, by showing me that love could exist outside the narrow boxes I had been taught to accept, by demonstrating that there were many ways to live a meaningful, authentic life. 2 months into our relationship, we took our first weekend trip together. Victoria had a friend with a cabin in the mountains, a rustic place surrounded by pine trees and hiking trails. We packed simple food, books we wanted to read, and left the city behind. Those 2 days felt like stepping into another world. We hiked during the day, following trails that led to breathtaking views. We cooked simple meals together, read on the porch while the sun set, made love with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. On our last evening there, we sat by a fire pit, wrapped in blankets, watching stars emerge in the dark sky. The silence between us was comfortable, full rather than empty. "I love you," I said suddenly, the words escaping before I could second-guess them. Victoria turned to look at me, her face illuminated by the flickering firelight. "You do?" I nodded, suddenly certain despite all my previous doubts. "I do. I'm in love with you, Victoria. I don't completely understand it, and I'm still figuring out what it all means, but I know that much is true." She leaned over and kissed me, deep and slow, a kiss that held promises and hope. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have for a while now. I was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it." We held each other as the fire burned low, two women who had found each other against all odds, building something real in the ruins of their old lives. When we returned to the city, I felt different, stronger, more certain of what I wanted, even if I still had fears about what came next. I started telling people. Not everyone, not all at once, but slowly, carefully. I told my closest friends first, the ones I trusted most. Some were surprised, but supportive. Others struggled to understand, asking questions that ranged from curious to uncomfortable. A few pulled away, and that hurt more than I expected, but I survived it. With Victoria's support, I weathered the awkward conversations, the judgmental looks, the people who suddenly had opinions about my personal life. "You're so brave," one friend told me over coffee, after I had explained about Victoria. "I don't feel brave," I admitted. "I feel terrified most of the time." "That's what bravery is," she said, echoing something Victoria had once told me. Doing the scary thing anyway. My family was more complicated. My mother had passed away years ago, but I still had a sister, Karen, who lived across the country. When I told her over the phone, there was a long silence. "Are you sure about this?" she finally asked. "Yes," I said, more confident than I felt. Another pause. "Does she make you happy?" "Yes, very much." "Then I'm happy for you," Karen said, and I could hear the effort in her voice, the way she was pushing past her own discomfort to support me. "I'll admit, I don't completely understand, but you're my sister, and I love you. If this is what you want, then I'm on your side." It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was something. It was more than I had hoped for. I also introduced Victoria as my partner at a work gathering, the word heavy but powerful on my tongue. Some colleagues smiled warmly, others looked confused or uncomfortable, but nothing collapsed. The world kept spinning, and I was still standing. That's when I began to understand that most of my fear had been about my own internalized judgment, not about what others actually thought. Yes, some people had opinions, but their opinions didn't define me. I was the only one who could do that. Victoria and I built small rituals without even realizing it. Saturday mornings meant pancakes at her place. She always burned the first one because she forgot her stove ran hot, and I teased her every single time. On weekdays, she sent me voice notes during her lunch break, sometimes just a simple, "thinking of you," sometimes full rants about difficult patients or bureaucratic paperwork. I listened to them more than once, savoring the sound of her voice. We talked about the future cautiously, not wanting to jinx anything but unable to completely avoid the topic. Where did we see this going? What did we want? "I don't need marriage or any particular label," Victoria told me one night. "I just need you. However this looks, as long as we're together, I'm happy." "I need time," I admitted. to fully process everything, to become comfortable with who I'm becoming. But I want you in my life, Victoria, for as long as you'll have me. That's a lifetime then, she said, kissing me softly. Now, several months into this relationship, I find myself reflecting on how much has changed. At 44, I discovered that I didn't know myself as well as I thought I did. I learned that the principles I had clung to so tightly weren't actually my own, but borrowed beliefs that no longer served me. I learned that love doesn't follow rules or timelines. It doesn't care about your age, your past, your carefully constructed identity. It simply is, and you can either embrace it or spend your life running from the most beautiful thing you'll ever experience. With Victoria, I've found something I didn't even know I was looking for. It's not the dramatic, all-consuming love you see in movies. It's quieter, steadier, built on a foundation of friendship and respect and genuine connection. It's Saturday morning pancakes and voice notes at lunch. It's someone who sees all of you, the fears, the doubts, the broken parts, and loves you anyway. Sometimes I still wake up with doubt tugging at me, that old voice whispering that this is wrong. But then I feel Victoria next to me, her presence, a comfort, and a promise. And I remember something important. There is nothing wrong with peace. There is nothing sinful about feeling safe. Last week, one of my work colleagues asked me if Victoria had changed me. I thought about it carefully before answering. No, I finally said. She didn't change me. She revealed me, because that's the truth of it. Victoria didn't make me into someone new. She simply helped me become the person I had always been underneath all those layers of expectation and fear. She gave me permission to be honest, first with her, and then with myself. I look back at my life before Victoria, and it feels muted now, like watching an old film with the sound turned low. Everything was in shades of gray, functional but not fully alive. What we have isn't loud or dramatic, but it's real, and it's mine, and it's absolutely worth every moment of fear and uncertainty it took to get here. I'm 44 years old, and I'm still figuring out who I am. But for the first time in my life, I'm doing it honestly. I'm choosing love over fear, truth over comfort, possibility over principle. And I don't regret that kiss, not for a single moment. This is my story, and it's still unfolding. I don't know exactly where it will lead, what challenges Victoria and I will face, or how others will continue to react. But I know that I'm no longer sleepwalking through my own life. I'm awake. I'm alive. I'm in love. And that, I've learned,